Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be a guide today as I look at 1989 and 1990 score baseball cards. And it's fun to watch in these sets to see how score went from its very primitive, very innovative, but very primitive start in 1988 and see how they evolved into the 90s. And it's fun primarily because in the 1988 card set, they were super ambitious by coming out with a really cutting edge card in terms of the technology and all the things they did in the card. But at the same time, it kind of bogged down in the mid to late 1980s design world where they didn't know how to make something really pop. It was still kind of a chaotic time, and the 1990s was a time where you really had to refine everything. And so they had everything that they needed. They just didn't know quite how to pull it all together. And 89 was the year where they were really able to start to the big thing was they were able to fix a whole bunch of problems that had plagued the 1988 set. And so the 89 set would need to fix things like the focus on the images, which was terrible. The overall card design, the way that the design itself read on the cards, the fact that you couldn't read the card numbers and the card backs were kind of congested. There were a number of issues they were going to have to address, and in the 89 set, they were able to, for the most part, not solve those, but address them well enough so the card set came out a lot better. I'm not saying that the card set is a great card set or necessarily a good card set. That's for you to decide. But it's a big improvement over 1988 because now they were able to figure out how to really work with it. And that was the advantage to 1989. 1990 was when they were able to pull it together and resolve it into a really good card design, or at least they had the ability to. Whether they would succeed or not, we'll see. The 89 cards are, first off, they're really distinctive by the fact that they actually have a white border instead of a colored border. Now, Score did continue to do the different colors every 110 cards. So the first 110 cards has one color, and then another one through 220, and then through 330, 440. Each one of these groups does have a different distinct color, but instead of doing the outer border, which the 1988 card set had, here they did a white border. There are some disadvantages because when you look at the entire complete 660 card set from 1988, when you look at it from the side, it looks really cool. Because of all the different groupings of colors, it breaks it up and makes it look a little bit more manageable. You see 660 cards of all white cards on the side, or they all look the same, it's kind of daunting. So in terms of just the way that the card set looked out of the box, it didn't have the same mystique. But as you're pulling the cards out of the pack, they did feel a little bit more cohesive, like they came from the same set. And they still have the colors, like I said, but they have it as an inset border. And then they have a big box down at the bottom for the player name. So that's really where the color for each card comes, the theme. So it's set in, and the white border does a really good job of, it's kind of like playing a trick. It gives you better control over the overall card design if it's done right. And they kind of were doing it right. The only problem I have with the card design here is the fact that they still have the two tones they had in 88. Now in 88, the second tone for each one of these groupings was on the back. Here they have it on the front, and right down at the bottom they have a baseball diamond where the team name is located. And so it actually looks really good. I like the way that it is designed in there. Pretty much any color combination can work in that way. The problem is up in the top right corner, they have the Score logo, which is also in that secondary color. And it's not as simple as it's just the Score logo, but the Score logo has this carrot-like design on the side, which means that it actually cuts into the image. So it's kind of an overpowering component, and the colors don't really work well as a combination. And so what you can get away with down at the bottom, you cannot up at the top. So card design, they were getting closer. They were actually getting a lot better with the card designs. They'd have a lot of evolution to do, but they were getting closer. The image quality was markedly better than the previous year. It still wasn't great, but it was better. So that helped out a lot. And the selections of the images were working better. So this card on the card front is an overall improvement. Again, I'm not saying that you may like it better. I'm just saying that they've been really improving it. But on the card back, there's a much bigger benefit in that, number one, you can read the number. The card number actually reads. But two, the whole card back now feels kind of spacious. They used really fine text in 1988, and it was difficult to read in the back. It felt congested. Here you feel like you can breathe, like you can stretch out, like there's room to maneuver. And it's a big improvement they have on the card set. They also have a really good image back here. So overall, this card was an out-and-out improvement over 1988. They would have quite a ways to go to make a really good card, like a potentially great card, but this was a step in the right direction, so kudos to them for that. And they also designed the set in the same way with not just the different color themes, but they also had the same subsets. First off, they had the rookies, which aren't really rookies, they are prospect cards. These are minor leaguers who have earned the right to be in the majors. And then they have their highlights from the season, so various cool things that happen during the season. And then they have a series of cards for the World Series. In 88, they did do a series of cards that were a tribute to Reggie Jackson. Here in 89, they didn't do that, so that's the only difference in terms of the set itself between the two. And they did do a little lenticular card in every single pack, and in this case, it is a year to remember, so it's looking at a whole bunch of different years, and it's interesting things that happened during that year. So again, they're information cards, which is a cool little thing that they did in these packs, and the fronts are all different in every single card. It looks a little bit different each one, so it looks different on the front and on the back, which is good. And then they did another traded set as well. So this is another 110 cards that is 1 through 110 with the T number at the end. So they've done that just like the previous year. They did not do a glossy release of these cards. That was only 1988. They also, unfortunately, did not do box bottoms in 1989. That was also only 1988. So they lost a little bit of the fun, but still, overall, they were getting into this whole idea of being a professional card company. They were doing a good job of that, so that was good. They did do a couple of special release sets, just sets that were sold independently. The first one being Young Superstars 1 and 2, so this was something they'd done in 88. And these cards, they have the glossy design just like the previous year. In fact, the cards look basically exactly the same as the previous year. And again, they have the 1 and the 2 with the same numbers. And the difference is one is kind of a hot pink, and the other one is orange. So that's the way you can see the 1989 Young Superstars cards. They also did a Rising Stars set, and this is a blue bordered card that is an actual blue bordered card. They also did a Superstars set, which is a red border card. But not only that, these two sets, Rising Stars and Superstars, use the same card stock as the main set. So the only glossy cards are the Young Superstars sets. And then they did one more set, which was called Scoring Masters. And this is looking at a bunch of star players. They tend to be younger stars, but it kind of runs the entire gambit. And in this case, they have I think it's a picture that is changed to an art effect, but it's basically an art design on the card front, and it's a pretty cool one. The way that they did it, it's a pretty strong artistic approach. Very heavy on the art. I think that's part of the reason why I think that it's basically an artized card. But they're kind of cool. It was sold as a complete set, and interestingly enough, every single set had cards on the outside of the box, or they had the design of cards on the outside of the box. So the boxes are actually collectible. And this is a year when Ken Griffey Jr. had a sort of rookie card. So that's in the set, and it also means that one of the boxes has a Ken Griffey Jr. sort of rookie on the outside of the box too. So it's kind of like their box bottoms for 89, as close as they got. For 1990, they finally got around to really getting into a good card design. Again, I didn't say that they succeeded, but they got around to working on it. So that was good. They went back to the full color border, but in this case, they went with a really bold color. Each of the different colors is very, very bold, and that's good. The bold colors was an important move that they made. The image quality was still really good, but not great. So they still read pretty well, but the image selection was improving quite a bit. So they didn't really need to worry too much about just how acute the quality of the image was, because the pictures were reading better. Unfortunately, the big drawback of this card set is the fact that inside of that different colored border is a yellow inset border on every single card. So they all have this, and it's very overpowering. Now, on certain cards, it actually works pretty decently, but unfortunately, on far too many, I would say in the vast majority of the cards, the yellow border looks terrible. And on top of that, it competes with the image inside. So for some of these cards, when you look at it, it's the yellow border that you see, and it just completely alters the effectiveness of the card design. The card backs are basically the same. The big difference here is that they have the color around the outside, but otherwise it's basically the 89 card back. But here in this set, they were getting really close to making a great card. They just need a little bit more work. And fortunately in 1991, I think they finally pulled it together. But here you can see that they're getting close. They are partially successful in terms of some cards actually pulled it off. So it's one of those cases where you hold up a card that looks good and go, what works about it? Hold up one that is not good, what doesn't work? It's a great learning opportunity. So kudos to them for that. And then they again did a whole bunch of their typical subsets. They started off with their rookies, and again, these are prospects. But they also did draft pick rookies in this set. Now, this is something that they had innovated in 1989 in football. And in football, you can get away with draft pick rookies. It works. In baseball, you have guys like Ken Griffey Jr. who are successful. But a draft pick rookie in baseball is just I wonder how this guy's going to do. Because in baseball, the minor leagues is what for football and basketball, college is for. That's where you work through the guys who have potential and figure out the guys who are going to be able to succeed. That doesn't mean that when you get drafted out of college, everything is known about you, but the odds are a lot better. And so in baseball, it's a long shot. And so these cards were really exciting in 1990. But we learned very quickly that in baseball, it just doesn't matter. Who cares if you're a draft pick? We're going to wait and see. So it was cool to have these cards in there. And again, they were exciting at the time. They also did their season highlights cards, so that was in here as well. And they also, again, did their World Series set of cards. But they also did another card of tremendous note, and that is the legendary Bo Jackson football baseball card. Technically, this is the other one. They did one in football in 1989, and here's this one is in 1990. The cards are very similar. I mean, the fronts are basically the same. But if you're ever curious about which one is which, the baseball one is numbered way out of range for 89 football. 697, yeah, that's not in the 89 football set. But that card was one of those great legendary cards, and I could do a whole video about it. I might, but we'll see. But it's a legendary card, and it was in this set, and it was one of the great all-time chase cards. Really fun card, and anybody who was collecting at the time, odds are they're going to remember this card really well. And then the last subset they did was Dream Team, Score Dream Team. And this was the kickoff of doing these cards, which they would do every single year. It become really a staple of Score. And these are fun art cards. I've never been a fan of the Don Russ art cards. I mean, I respect it. I just never liked it. These cards, I actually like them a lot. I mean, the cards themselves are kind of anemic with the white border, but I like the art on the inside. And they did a special set of Dream Team cards. They're actually rookie Dream Team cards, and it's really only 9 cards plus a 10th card. And the 10th card is a tribute to the late Commissioner Giamatti, who just passed away. But these 10 cards, which are done basically the same as the ones in the set, these were done as an insert into complete sets. And these are numbered B1 through B10. So you're definitely not going to confuse them. And they again did lenticular cards. In this case, it's MVPs. So they have a year, and they have the AL or the NL, and then on the back it talks a little bit about who that player is. And they also did another traded set. In this case, they used a bright orange, which really highlights the problem with the yellow inset border. If you're ever driving at night and you're getting drowsy, have one of these cards available. You look at that, it's going to wake you up in an instant. And then again, they did Young Superstars 1 and Young Superstars 2. These again continue with the same glossy cardstock. And in this case, the first one has a blue with a purplish hue text box down at the bottom, and then the other one has more of an aqua color. So those are, again, a tradition they were doing, and the cards, I mean, they really do look the same. So this is one of those things where you got to get the colors in order to figure out which one is which. And then they did a very, 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 very bold design for their Rising Stars and for their Superstars. The Rising Stars are blue with green, and then the Superstars are red with blue. And the boldness of these cards shows that Score is just kind of playing around with these cards. I remember these as feeling like cards that came in supermarket blister packs. They had that bold nature of the card itself is trying to scream at you across the grocery store to get you to come over and buy it. It's interesting, and for what they were doing, these cards actually worked really good. So if you want to understand how you market in a grocery store or in a Kmart, etc., this card design is exactly how you're supposed to grab somebody's eye. So it's interesting to see a card set that doesn't really work as a card set as much as works as a great promotional tool just to pull you over to be interested in buying these cards. So that is basically what they did for '89 and 1990. In 1991, they'd kind of finally pull everything together and become a truly full-blown professional set. It's not that they weren't already. They were still a cutting-edge set. They were right up at the front, but they hadn't quite pulled everything together to make a card that, in my opinion, could be considered a truly great card. And in 1991, and then again in a reinvention in 1992, you'd really see that come together. So I'm going to look at that at a separate time, but this is that transitional time where they started off with something where they were punching well above their weight, and then they were evolving it over time and doing a really good job of evolving it. And in baseball, you could get away with being kind of lazy. Football is a whole different story. They had to grow up in a hurry, and they were doing that. But in baseball, it is kind of fun to watch how these designs were changing. So again, I'll check out 91 and 92 later on. As far as this video goes, they really didn't do a lot else. The only other things were a McDonald's set, which I'll talk about with the McDonald's cards, and a lenticular card that with Nolan Ryan. I'm not going to worry about that here. That's really all else that they did. So this is all for this video. I hope that you've learned something. Definitely subscribe if you haven't done so already. Check out my other videos, and thank you very much for watching.